Welcome back, coaches. The entire goal with this podcast is to grow your net worth, whether that's boosting your profits, reducing your taxes, or investing for long-term growth. That's the goal here at Dollars and Dumbbells. I'm your host, Justin Green, certified financial planner, and I work with online health and fitness coaches. Today, I'm excited to bring you my conversation with Zakk Colburn. Zack's a business coach and the founder of PTBI, where he helps online health and fitness coaches hit 5 to 10K months. But what I'm excited to show you guys today is how Zakk actually manages his personal and business finances. He's been able to build a successful business and grow his net worth to over 7 figures, but he's going to peel back the layers of how he did this when he wasn't making the money he's making now and how he thinks about managing his finances. Think of yourself as a fly on the wall as two nerds talk about money for about 45 minutes. And at the end of the day, personal finances is exactly that. It's personal, right? Zack's going to share what he values and how he manages money, but that might be different for you. So I'm really excited to bring this conversation, and hopefully I can bring more conversations where people show behind the scenes of how they're managing their money, so that way you can learn from their mistakes, and see what works for them. All right, so I'm going to hit you with a few disclaimers at the end of the episode, so stay tuned to those. But let's just dive straight into the episode with Zakk, so that way you can learn how to better manage your money. Welcome back to the show, Zakk. How's it going?
Dude, it's been too long. It's been way too long. I think it's been like 2-3 years.
Episode 16, and I'm on episode like 160 now. So 52 episodes a year. Yeah, probably about 2.5, 3 years. Yeah.
Dude, well, I appreciate being back on, man. I'm stoked to dive into it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for the conversation. It's going to be a different conversation. Back then, we talked about kind of what you were doing with PTBI and how you help on coaches go online and grow their business. But today we're more focused on the personal finance side of running a coaching business, which is really exciting because I just feel like there's such a gap out there, whether it's in the online fitness coaching space or honestly just the online creator coaching community as a whole. That whole solopreneur lifestyle, I just feel like it just gets missed.
Yeah, I mean, I think with myself, personal finance was like the second thing I learned. The first thing I ever learned was fitness, and then the next thing I learned was personal finance. And then I realized that I didn't have any finances to manage. So I'm like, so that's why I got into entrepreneurship, because I was like, okay, I'm learning all these cool things about personal finance, but I don't have any money. Whereas I feel like a lot of people learn how to make money and then they don't know what to do with it. And they also don't realize that that is a whole nother skill set in and of itself that an entrepreneur needs. Like, yes, you need to learn sales. You also need to learn marketing. You also need to learn team management, but you also need to learn personal finance. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And it's something I'm super passionate about. So I'm excited to open up my curtains and kind of reveal, behind the scenes of what I have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll touch on, first off, you said that, better than most. Managing money and making money are two completely different skills, but they go hand in hand, right? And it's like, if you don't know how to make money, but you're really good at managing money, well, then you're probably building the skills you'll need once you do make money. But on the flip side, like if you know how to manage money, you don't know how to make money, it was like, how far can you really go?
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like they do go hand in hand, but they're completely different skills too, because in order to make money, you got to probably take bigger risk. You got to be more abundant. But managing money is actually it's helpful to be a little bit more scarce and think about like what could happen. And I know you posted a reel that kind of kicked us off connecting again, and you called yourself conservative, and the first thing you mentioned was building an emergency fund, which is like the least sexy thing in personal finance, but it's so important but so often ignored. So why don't we just kick it off there? Like, why did you feel it was so important to build out that cash fund, that emergency fund?
Yeah, so I think the very beginning of my journey was driven by scarcity. It was driven by an insecurity that I didn't have enough. And, I've always wanted, the American dream, wife, 2 kids, white picket fence. And I remember being in college and looking at the opportunities that I had and thinking, how am I ever going to afford that? How am I ever going to afford taking care of a kid, owning a home, doing all this kind of thing. So I was very driven by scarcity. And so every single time, every single dollar I made, I kept it. And I was very conservative with making sure that I didn't spend my money, because I didn't know where it was going to come from in the future. And so that kind of kicked off my road into, okay, I need to save and I need to hold on. And I also need to make sure I grow this place or put this money in places that are going to grow and be responsible with this money. So the very beginning, I would say back in like 2017 to 2018, it was just how can I get as much cash as possible and how can I save up enough to where I feel really secure. And I put a couple habits in place that I still follow to this day, and it serves me very well. Essentially, it is, make sure at the end of the month to pay off all my debts, all my credits, and I'm all caught up on my finances. I try not to carry over any debt into, the next month. Of course, I have like a car payment, things like that I'm paying off, but like I try not to do anything that I can't pay off by the end of the month. And then whatever cash I have left over, I save it as cash and I put a little bit in, my savings. I know I put a little bit in my investments, I put a little bit in my crypto, but I mostly hang on to cash. And there was a period where I saved up a lot of cash, like more cash than I even knew what to do with. And I paid taxes on that cash. I spent a little bit of that cash, and that cash got down to a point to where I was like kind of losing sleep a little bit at night. And I'm like, I actually don't feel comfortable with how little cash I have this in an account right now. And that's when I learned, okay, I should have a baseline number that is always full so I can sleep at night and I can actually take a lot of the pressures off of the day-to-day stresses, knowing that I can handle pretty much whatever punch is thrown my way. I can sleep at night, and I'll tell you, my happiness levels are just through the roof because I'm actually able to relax. Like at 5 p.m. at night, when the workday is over, I could have a conversation with my wife. We could watch a movie and we could enjoy our lives without having the stress of thinking, what if the car breaks down? What if, Soza needs to go to the vet? What if, this emergency, we know we can afford it. And that to me is priceless.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Because the pushback on the emergency fund is always like, but I could invest it and it could be earning X%. And it's like, you just said it, like, that's not the goal. It's really
Mm-hmm.
just to keep me like
Peace of mind.
comfortable, know that it's there, peace of mind, give you a little bit of freedom to run your business without being so focused on sales and the client, and knowing that you can ride out a month or two if it gets bad. Like, it gives you the ability to operate without this like extreme urgency. Like some urgency I think is good, but you're not like, you're
Do or
just not
die.
forced
Yeah.
to make money. Because yeah, that comes through some people. Like they're like, oh, that's how I perform best. And it's like, I don't know, like maybe, but not most. Like you'd be a
It's not
rare
fun.
person if you actually, yeah, like after a while you will burn out.
Yeah. Couple things. The first thing is I remember when I was first starting my business, I went full time online and I didn't have that much funds. And I'm like, I might have like a month, right? One bad month can send me back to the bussing tables. And when the workday ended and it was 7, 8 p.m. at night, like you're not going to get that much work done at 9 p.m. at night, 11 p.m. at night. You're not going to be prospecting clients. So I was just a ball of anxiety. As soon as the workday ended and there was nothing left for me to do, I was restless. But now with that emergency fund, I'm like, cool, workday's over. I'll hit it again tomorrow. I'm not in a rush. I'm not scared. I'm not anxious. The other thing too, I learned a good way to put it was that your emergency fund is your insurance policy for your investments, right? The last thing that you want to do is withdraw your investments. The worst thing that you could do for your retirement or for your financial future is to stop your money from compounding. And so the emergency fund is your insurance policy to where if you ever need money, you don't have to take out of investments. You don't have to stop the compounding. You don't have to, ruin the best thing that's working for you, not against you. So that's another way I like to think of it as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. How did you determine like your amount that you needed? Like what made you most comfortable? The rule of thumb is often like 3 to 6 months of expenses, but this is such a personal number. If you're someone who has a lot of anxiety, you might go a little bit higher. If you're someone who has a spouse with a really good income, you can probably go a little bit lower. So I'm just curious, like, how did you come up with your amount? And you're married now. That wasn't a thing last time we talked. So do you
Yes.
guys
Yeah.
kind of have you combined these things?
So we'll start off on the first one. The number that I've decided on is purely the number that I can sleep at night. If I don't feel comfortable, if I
Yeah.
feel anxious, if I feel like it's not enough, then I will save more cash. And if I feel like, oh, this is a lot of cash, and I actually like, there's a number where you look at this and you're like, this is too much money. Like you're like, I should do something with this. Either put it into a mentor, invest it into the business, put it into some sort of investments. And so I just found that balance. Okay, when I'm at this number, I feel a little bit anxious and this doesn't feel like enough. When I'm at this number, this feels like a lot and I almost feel like it should be working for me. And so that's kind of how I came across the number. It was more of like how does this make me feel? Because obviously we know finances is very much emotional as it is logic. And that number, if I were to crunch it, it'd
Yep.
be about 6 to 12 months of emergency funds. So I'm definitely on the more conservative side with having more cash than I need.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. Um, we'll circle back to actually getting married and if you guys have combined, because I want to keep going down kind of the road a little bit. I kind of want to dive into your mindset a little bit more because in the coaching space, a lot of what you'll hear is invest back into your business. I just think there's this mindset of growing the business with no regards for optimizing profit, paying yourself, and using your business like profits to then grow personal wealth.
Mm.
And you went that route. Now, I'm not saying you didn't invest back in the business. I'm not saying you didn't, try and grow the business, but you strategically and intentionally also said, like, I'm going to take some money out of this and build, a stock portfolio for myself. So I want to kind of talk about the mindset there because I think a lot of people don't do that. They just think, I'm going to build this business. And then I don't really know if they think they're going to sell it or not. Because I personally don't think that's that optimal for most online fitness coaches, but I want to like dive into that mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just comes down to like what I've always wanted, what my personal dream was. If I'm being completely honest, my goal isn't to be an Elon Musk. My goal isn't to be, Jeff Bezos. My goal isn't to build this massive business and company. My goal is to essentially achieve the American dream with ease, right? I want to be able to, take care of my family. I want to have free time. I want to be free. I want to have money to be able to live off of. And so I didn't necessarily need, to build a massive, massive business. I just needed to build a business that made enough money for me to live comfortably, pay my team well, enjoy what I do, have longevity in an industry that I love, and take the cream of the cream off the top. And I don't know if I said that right, but take the top off and put it in a place that's going to grow. And so I think for me, it's I just know what I want. I've achieved my lifestyle that I've wanted to achieve, and everything else is icing on the cake. And so as long as the bills are paid, as long as my family's taken care of, as long as I have the time to be able to travel when I want to, network when I want to, then everything else can just go into growing that number.
So would you consider it a lifestyle business?
I would consider it a lifestyle business 100%.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I think more coaches need to have that conversation with themselves and realize that's what they're building. Because a lot of them want to build that, but then they just kind of get convinced by someone else that they need to build something different than what they were actually intending on doing. Um, but I mean, that's like I love that. Like that's why I like because you're a business coach, right? And there's other business coaches. Most of them are like hustle, 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 hustle. And I feel like you have this balance that a lot of coaches don't have of like, yeah, I'm gonna hustle, but also like I'm gonna chill with my wife like at
Yeah.
7 p.m. on the night. Like I have kids, right? And I know you I think kids are maybe in your guys' future, but like when you have kids, there's no hustling 24/7 anymore.
Yeah.
Like, like it's gone.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just comes down to my personality, and like I said, like what I wanted from the very beginning was to have a business that I enjoyed doing, but I can also chill and read. Some of my favorite things to do is to just watch TV, watch movies with my wife, read books. And so when it comes time to do
How
that,
dare you? How
yeah.
dare you
Well,
watch TV?
when it comes time to do that, I'm going to allow myself to do that stress free because that's what I'm working for.
Yeah.
Right. when I think back some of my best days, my best childhood days, the memories that I have growing up as a kid, I'm like, some of my best days were the days where I spent the entire day playing video games with my friends or watching movies with my brothers and sisters. And so when a Sunday comes around and there's nothing on my calendar, there's nothing to do, and I'm like, I could be productive, but I also could enjoy my dream life, which is exactly what I'm working for. I'm going to choose to do that because, I want to make sure that I'm taking a little bit of eating a little bit of the pie while I'm baking it as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like, I really do. I always tell people it's like you want to build wealth for the future, but you need to live a good life now, right? Like, I have too many experiences for me where I know life is short, right? So, like, I lost my mom at the age of 40 when I was in college, and then I lost my cousin who was a mentor of mine in his early 40s, and it's like, I talk about retirement planning and stuff like that with clients, but that's so often in the future. It's like you can't ignore today too, right? And so that's, I think that's something really good that you just mentioned. So you don't build this financial freedom by accident. So I want to talk about like the actual system you have in place. Do you have a system, like, not just now, but like early on in your business where you put X%, into investments? Like, is it that systematic, or do you, what type of setup do you have?
I'll be really honest. This is what I've done. This is what's worked for me. I don't know if it's as optimal as it could be.
Yeah,
Um,
this isn't advice. This is straight
yeah,
up
this is advice. This is
what's
what
worked
I've
for
done.
you.
So,
Um,
what I typically do is obviously I try to make as much money in a 30-day period as possible in my business. We're trying to hit record months. We're trying to, make as much money as possible, but I'm also trying to be profitable, right? I'm
sure.
trying to profit as much money as possible. And typically what I'll do is put everything on a credit card, all my business expenses, all my personal expenses. And depending on how we're looking by the end of the month, I'll make decisions either to keep it pumping or to maybe, put the brakes on a little bit just to make sure that we can make profit at the end of every single
What
month.
do you mean by that? Like, keep what
Like
pumping? Like
with
ads and stuff?
ad spend,
Okay,
exactly.
gotcha.
Yeah. If we're doing really well and we have a very, very big runway to where I can see we're going to be very profitable, I'll keep the ad spend pumping, and, it won't matter because like even if it dips into a little bit of that profit, we're still making so much profit that it doesn't really matter. But then there are some months where I can look, I'm like, hey, in the next 2 weeks, if we don't hit our numbers, we're going to be unprofitable. And so just to give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room, I'm going to bring the ad spend down just to make sure we can be profitable. So that happens. And then at the end of the month, I'll take whatever I make, I'll pay off all of the debt. So the business credit card, my personal credit card.
Yeah, and I just want to
I
clarify. Those are, you just said it, but those are, anyone listening, those are two different cards. So like you're
Yes.
putting your business expense on one card and personal on another card. It's
Mhm.
a big mistake I see online coaches make. So I just want to clarify that those are
Yeah.
two different cards.
Yeah, two different cards. And
Yeah,
my wife shares the same personal card too. Um, so yeah, pay off both of those cards, and then I have my profit. I take 30% of that profit and put it into an account to save for taxes. So that way I just don't see it.
smart.
It doesn't hurt me when that money gets taken out. And then I take whatever's left over, and it's usually an odd number, right? Of some sort of odd, not an even, it's not clean. And so let's say I make $18,625, right? I'll usually round down to the nearest five and put whatever that round down number is into investments, and I'll save the rest as cash. So if I
So what would that
do,
be? So if you did 18,625, what do you like? What do you mean?
so I would take $3,625 and put that into investment, and I would save
And then
15,000
save,
as
keep.
cash.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And I would do that up until I was at my emergency savings. Now, once I'm at my emergency savings fund, I don't need to save more cash because the fund's already full. More cash isn't necessarily going to do me any good. So at the end of that month, I can either decide to invest way more, put away 15K if I want to, and take that 2,625 and spend it on my personal life. So I'll give it to Megan. We'll go have dinner. We'll do
Kind of
something
like a
we
little
enjoy.
bonus.
Exactly. Yeah. We're making sure to spend a little bit of the profit as well to make sure we enjoy our life. Or I'll save that cash and save it up towards like investments and stuff.
Gotcha. Now, I'm assuming you're an S corp.
Yes.
All right, so you're paying yourself a salary. Is this
Correct.
on top of the salary you're paying yourself, or is that kind of included in that mix?
So the salary I pay myself, most of what I pay myself can actually cover the personal credit card.
Personal bills.
So I don't use any of that business profit. I typically won't do any sort of personal, unless for that little bonus, I'll do that. But most of that, I don't have to touch to cover my personal expenses. I do make
So,
sure to keep my personal expenses within the amount that I pay myself salary.
all right. So I'm going to recap. So basically, you're paying yourself enough salary to cover your baseline living expenses. Best way to put it.
Correct.
Smart.
And
Yeah. And then
yeah,
you're using profit.
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then you're using profit to then, save, invest, and maybe enjoy life a little bit more above and
Correct.
beyond your baseline expenses.
Correct. Yeah. And when I say enjoy life a little bit more, like at the end of the month, if we like, hey, we got some good profit left over. What do you want to do? Like, let's go do something. Let's go get something that we've always wanted. Let's go knock something off the list. So that way we're also making sure that we're living our life too.
So one day the profit wasn't there. What did you do then?
Well, the profit, you mean the profit to spend?
I'm just saying, like early on, right? Like you weren't making as much money, right? We all start at zero. And I'm just curious, like, so did you just keep your living expenses super low? Like, what was your
Yeah, my
strategy
living
back then? I
expenses
mean,
were
you were
abysmal.
single probably, so
Yeah.
it was a little different.
My living expenses were abysmal, and I did everything I possibly could to keep my living expenses as low as possible. So I shared a bedroom. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 roommates. One of the roommate had a girlfriend, and I was the third person in that bedroom. Right. So it was
That's
my roommate, his
terrible.
girlfriend, and me sharing a room. And I didn't mind it, man. For me, it was like, this is part of my story. This is like
Yeah.
the thick of the grind. I drove a Honda Civic for a long time. My dad
I
bought it
still
for
got
me.
mine.
Yeah, I sold it because it actually crapped out on me, but I upgraded it for a Corvette, which I don't regret. But yeah, I drove that Honda Civic that was paid off for a very, very long time. I made my grocery bill super low. I remember my grocery bill was like $35 a week. Now it's like, with inflation and stuff, is like
Yeah,
120, which is
there's no way
insane.
it's 35
Um,
anymore.
but I intentionally made decisions to kind of keep my expenses low. And I don't think most people would make those kind of decisions.
No, they don't. They don't. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. So
And that's
I
why I
would say,
wanted to bring it back to like, because there's a lot of people who listen who maybe aren't flush in profits right now, right? And
yeah.
that's why I wanted to bring it back to like, okay, when you weren't super profitable, like, what did you do?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, because when I think about it, there wasn't a time I was never profitable. But to highlight your point, I did keep my living expenses as low as freaking possible. And even
Mhm.
today, I would say, relative to how much I make, my living expenses are still relatively pretty low.
Yeah, so you've stayed frugal despite growing your profit, which the term that gets used a lot is called lifestyle creep. I don't know if you've ever heard it before,
I have
but
heard of it.
yeah, essentially it just means like as you make more money, you spend more money. And
Yeah.
then I think part of it, like that is the goal of life, right? Like,
Hmm.
so it shouldn't be that you start making a whole bunch more money and you don't spend any more money. You just want to make sure that it's intentional and that you're not spending at a higher rate than what you're making, because that's also very common. I'm sure you've talked to coaches who are doing 10K a month, but yet they spend 11K, if not
Hmm.
more, a month. It's just, unfortunately, it's common.
Yeah.
Um,
I will say I did experience that a little bit in 2023. We started making a lot of money very, very quickly. And I was like, okay, let me knock off a couple things, finally make some upgrades. I got a car, I got a watch, got a couple things for Megan too. We got married, we went on a couple trips. And then after you get out of your system, I was like, I got to a point where I realized, I'm like, okay, I can see where this is dangerous, because the dopamine you get from spending money and
yeah.
upgrading your life is it's a real thing.
Hmm.
And so I really had to pull myself back and be like, okay, this is where I draw the line. My basic needs are met. I have a couple nice things, and I'm going to stop right here to make sure that I don't fall into this trap and get into this rut of constantly trying to look for the next thing to chase and upgrade, et cetera, and just, relax.
Yeah, and what I heard there too was the only thing that you probably bought that was like an ongoing hit to your cash flow was the car, right? And so a
Yeah.
lot of people will um, they'll buy a lot of things, but not just buy it, but it's like they take out loans and all that, and so it's like now they've locked themselves into that higher lifestyle. Whereas like, yeah, some trips, a watch, etc. It's like those are one-time expenses. You
Mhm.
know, like sure, maybe someone could look at it and argue it wasn't prudent, but at the end of the day, it's like at least you didn't lock yourself into
Yeah. I will say, looking back, getting that car was the worst financial decision I've ever made. And I
it.
was I was very
Most
aware of
cars
it.
are.
Yeah, I was very aware of it, but I gave myself some grace period in saying that I've made a lot of good decisions in life. I can afford to make one bad decision that I'll get a lot of enjoyment from. It's it helps the brand as surface level as it is.
But it's
I'm
not a
not
bad
trying.
decision if you can afford it.
Yeah,
Like
I also made sure to wait. My goal was seven figure net worth. If I can hit a 7-figure net worth between my investments and my cash, I'll get the car. When I hit it, I got the car, and I'm still able. I'm paying it off. I got a loan, but I made sure that that loan amount fits within my salary. So, yeah, I
right.
made sure it was done correctly. But yeah, the car was on paper a dumb decision, but emotionally very happy.
Yeah, and it sounds like you went about it the right way.
Yeah,
What were you gonna say? It helps with
I was gonna
the
say it does help with the
business.
personal brand.
Yeah.
Um, I got to the point to where people were making comments like, "Oh, you're a business coach making all this money, but you're driving a Honda Civic." I'm like, "All right." At this point, the Honda Civic is actually hurting me rather than serving me, and so at that point, I was like, I justified. I'm like, I could upgrade the car.
So that's so dangerous. And I wanted to dive into that because that is a thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
People start to make buying decisions. Now, I'm going to circle back. You could afford it, but people will do that and make that decision before they can afford it because of the pressure of looking successful. And so I kind of thought that's where you were going. I was like, "Ooh, I want to see if this is like if we can hit that real quick because that is like I want to just warn people who are listening. That is a really dangerous thing to do when you can't afford it to just start buying things to look successful for other people."
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like I said, it is a dangerous place because that dopamine addiction it's a real thing. But yeah, I did wait. I had a number in mind, and I made sure I went about it the right way. And I also stopped too. I think that's another thing. Is like, okay, I got the car, I got a couple nice things. I'm stopping here, like because I can
Yeah,
feel
because
it
the
creep up. I'm
car,
like, what? Yeah,
yeah, the
you,
car leads to the bigger condo and the bigger,
dude.
and the
I,
yeah,
I had heard this thing. It's like when once you get one nice thing and you put it next to all the other things that you have, all of a sudden you see everywhere else that needs an upgrade.
it's
And
there's a there's a word for it, like a psychological, like it's like once you buy like a new couch, well, all of a sudden you need the new lamps and then you need the
exactly,
new
yeah,
shelf and I wish I could think of the word.
yeah. It's like the best way I can describe it is like if you're someone who's into tattoos and you got all these beautiful covers tattoos, everyone's gonna say, "Wow, look at those amazing tattoos," but all you can see is the empty space, right? Like you're like, oh well, I have a missing spot here, and I need to fill this spot here, and I need to do this thing over here. It's just never ending. So I'm like, that was a really difficult thing for me to do, but I feel like going into this year, I'm like, okay, we've squashed that. We're back to baseline.
Yeah, so it's definitely the concepts from Psychology of Money. I wish I could remember it, but Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Have you read it?
Yes, I love
Yeah,
Morgan Housel. Listen
yeah,
to all of his
good
podcasts.
writer.
Fire.
Yeah, I can't think of the name, but it's definitely I know I read it because I'm rereading Psychology of Money. I read it when it came out, and then I'm rereading it again.
Mhm.
So I know I just read it recently. So as soon as you said that, I immediately thought of it. But yeah, no, it happens a lot. So I saw you just got a house. You guys are moving to Austin.
Yeah, so we're moving to Austin. Did not buy a house. Many reasons as to why
Got
we
a
didn't buy.
house, didn't buy a house.
Yeah, we got it. We secured a lease, and we're going to be moving to
Yeah,
Austin, which I'm
nice,
super
cool.
excited about.
Yeah, I want to dive into the rent buy conversation. So, I know you want the American dream, the house, the picket fence. So why didn't you guys decide to buy?
I think there's a few different reasons. Number one, on the logistical side, we don't know where we want to be. We've never lived in Austin. We're both from California. We love California. We got out for the taxes. We might end up back there if we have kids and we want to be closer to family. Like we don't know where we're gonna be. We might love Austin and stay there. The three options that we have is we either move to Austin, love it, have kids, raise them there. Move to Austin, don't love it so much, have kids, move back to California, or move to Austin, don't have kids and travel the world. Like those are the three options. So like we don't want to pick a spot and lock us in when our life is still, up in the air. But from an investment standpoint, I just don't think it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze, in my opinion. I think that for the type of house that I want to live um, in order for me to get a mortgage or secure the house, I would essentially go cash broke. I'd be putting all of my cash into, getting a down payment on a mortgage that I'm then paying into. And there's just better opportunities and better returns to put your money elsewhere. So that's why we didn't buy a house. Plus, I don't want to, I'm not a handy person. If something breaks, I don't
Call
want
the
to,
landlord.
I'd rather just call a landlord. Exactly. And the other thing too, I was actually talking to my friend who was in the process of buying a house, and he owns his own business. And I was very curious as to what this process would go and look like. And he got his ass kicked because as a business owner, you're incentivized to take a ton of write-offs. And so on paper, you don't make as much money as you actually do. And so he was having a hard time getting a mortgage. Otherwise, he would have had to put like 500K down for a house because on paper, he's not making any money. And he's like, it's one game or the other. You could play the business owner game, take a bunch of write-offs, but on paper, you're going to have a hard time getting a mortgage because you're not making any money, quote unquote. Or you could play the W2 game and get a mortgage a lot easier and, not get the write-off incentive. So I thought that was really interesting as well.
Yeah, so a couple things we'll dive into there. I set you up for this. I also rent, by the way. I don't own. One, because we don't want to stay here in Massachusetts, and the cost of living here is just outrageous. But when you first buy a house, the first most people don't realize this because they're always like, "Well, I'm going to buy because it's going to gain equity and da da da." The first 5 to 7 years is almost always interest rate, interest on the payments. Like if you ever go back and look at your statement, like probably 90+% of your monthly payment is going to interest and not towards like the equity of the home. Most people don't realize that, and so for entrepreneurs, I'm always like, if you think you're going to bounce around, like look at renting because buying, you've got all the closing costs, you've got the cost of repairs. Like there's a lot of research that shows actually your primary home isn't really that good of an investment either. It's more of the lifestyle. You're buying the lifestyle, which is totally cool. Most people are going to buy a home, and I will buy a home eventually too. But not because of the investment, right? It just
Mm-hmm.
locks you in. It's one of the it's like a forced savings. So I wanted to highlight that. But then the second point about your business owner friend, the worst thing you can do if you want to buy a house is go self-employed right before. It's going to be extremely hard to get a mortgage because they're going to want to see proof of income. They're going to want to see a couple years record. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, business owner who's been in it for a couple years, this is where you have to be smart about what you're doing with your taxes because some people will let taxes lead every single decision. And I personally, someone looking at your whole financial picture, think it's a terrible idea. The best way to get around taxes is just make more money and then you can pay. You know what I mean? But because here's the thing, when you on paper look like you have no profit, well then yeah, nobody's going to loan you money. Like that's common sense when you think of it that way. But also on the other, unless you're a real estate, is he a real estate investor? I'm assuming not.
No, he's well, he does have a couple properties. He moved into a
Okay.
condo, paid that off, and now he's looking to move into a house. But he had
So
some help with
that
his
might
first
be
brother.
for him. That might be the what's going on there. Because when you're into real estate investing, there's actually some smart ways to get your taxes down to zero. But let's assume you're an online coach, right? And you have no
Mhm.
real estate. The only way to really take those write-offs and get your profit down to low enough where it would look terrible to get a mortgage is to spend the money. So
Dude,
yeah, sure, it's a write-off, but you're spending you might be spending 50 grand to save 10 to 15 grand, right?
I'm yeah,
It,
I 100% agree with you.
yeah. So I like to point that out because some people are so focused on how do I get my tax bill down. And it's like, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. I work with a tax team, tax strategist, and they've done some really great things.
Nick,
You
right?
know, I work with Nick, and then I work with Antonio Vajlica. Are you familiar with Antonio? Okay.
No.
So Nick and Antonio work together. Nick does
Oh,
my
nice.
taxes. He makes sure that everything is, buttoned up. But
Yep.
Antonio is my actual strategist to be like, here are some things that we can do to get your tax bill down. 90% of them I veto. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing
Because
that.
you have to
Because
spend
I don't want to
money.
spend money. I don't want to spend money to get my tax bill down when I could actually just have more money left over if I just paid the taxes.
Yes. So smart. It's so smart because it really, a write-off is a discount, right? So if it's something you are going to spend money on, yeah, write it off. That makes total sense. But like, you see the content online of, go buy like an $80,000 Range Rover and write it off. It's like, okay,
No, yeah.
one we
But
can
then you're gonna be
argue that.
broke.
One we can argue that you actually can't write it off as an online coach. Like, we'll put that argument aside. But two,
Mhm.
let's say you could legitimately. It's like, okay, but you didn't have 80,000 to go spend on a Range Rover, so you probably got a loan. Yeah, you wrote it off, but then you have to pay the loan for. It's
Yeah.
crazy what people will do to spend to save on taxes when it's really just a discount. You could just make more money and then not worry so much about
Yeah.
it.
I want to take the tax write offs where I can get them and the tax savings where I can get them, but I'm not going to go out of my way to spend money to try to, I'm not going to go spend 30 grand on, a project to, take a bunch of write offs when I could actually benefit more from just having that cash in my account.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the best tax write-offs there is self-employment retirement accounts. A lot of self-employed individuals, they think like, oh, like, I don't have a 401k because I don't work for an employer. And it's like, no, there's actually some really good accounts out there that will help you save on taxes if that's your goal. You can also do like a Roth, style contribution if that's your goal as well. But they are out there. But it's the same it's not the same concept, but like you do need the cash flow to do it, right?
Mhm.
So like you have to have cash to invest. Now, granted, it's yours still. It grows, it's invested, you'll have it in the future, but you do have to have the cash flow there. And so a lot of times, people come to me and they're like not making any money and they're like, how do I like save on taxes? I'm like, you would need either cash flow to spend or to save.
Yeah.
Not a whole
It's
lot of in between.
it's not a game worth trying to optimize, in my opinion. Um, just make more money.
Just make more money. Is it
Yeah.
That's what I always say too. Like it's
Yeah.
you know,
I would
it's
say one easy way to save on taxes is
S
just to
corp.
move states. Well, S
Oh yeah,
corp
yeah,
and
yeah.
also just move states. But
But I would
outside of
even
that,
argue like, and you kind of already highlighted this, is like move states if it makes sense for your life. Like
yes,
if you're all your family is in a, like for example, I live in Massachusetts, my family's here. It's like I'm not going to move to a random state I don't know anyone while raising kids when I want to be near family. Like I just have
yeah,
to accept the cost. And like you said earlier, it's like you might go back to California, even though we both know that's like the highest tax rate state possible.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree.
And it's only a state income tax too. Like most people listening to this might not be well versed on it. It's like you're still paying federal
Yeah,
taxes. Um, and then the other big ones, if you're making probably like 75 to 100,000 in profit or more, it's probably a good time to think about S corp. That can be a really big tax savings.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, S corp has done us really well. Um, the one thing that we did do this year that I didn't do years before was a high or health savings account. So
Okay.
that's something that we did. But that makes sense to me because I'm like, okay, I could take this money, put it into an account that is for me, that's going to grow, and I get the write off. I get to keep it. That makes sense.
Right. Exactly. It's like it's still your money. Yeah,
Yes.
you had to like take it out and put it somewhere, but it's still yours. And that's actually health savings accounts are like one of the best accounts out there. They're just not as practical. Like so they get a lot of hype as like triple tax benefit because you contribute tax deferred, it grows tax free, and as long as it's qualified distribution, it's tax free. But the reality is most entrepreneurs aren't going to have one. If you're an employee, you have to like your employer has to offer one. They don't always. It's a lower contribution limit. So like they're really, really good accounts. They're just like most people in the real world don't actually have access, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't cover so far that you wanna like mention on the well, one thing actually I want to mention because we started talking about this and we dove really deep into the personal finance, which is my bread and butter and I love, but I
Mhm.
do think there's a gap in the online coaching space. Our generation is going like they're starting businesses at a rapid rate because of the internet and everything. And there is a gap, I think, out there in the knowledge between business finances and personal finances. And I kind of just wanted to highlight that because we were kind of talking to start this episode, how much profit you're looking at, but then you have to pay yourself. And so just kind of anyone who's listening is like, if you're a business owner, those need to be aligned. Your business strategy actually should be aligned with like your family's personal strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that in the beginning, obviously it's going to be blended, but you need to figure out what your own personal living expenses are and what you need. And I also recommend giving yourself a little bit extra on top so you don't feel like you're suffocating yourself. If you are living off of $4,000 a month, then give yourself 5.5K per month to live off of. That way you have an extra 1.5K to travel, to go out to go out and spend, so that way you're not suffocating. And then whatever else you make on top of what you pay yourself, that 5.5K, is the business's money. And you have a responsibility as a business owner to do the responsible thing with that money, either saving it in a business account, investing it, putting it back into the business. And so I always did a really good job at knowing what was my money and knowing what was the business's money. Because as a leader, as a CEO of the business, I have a responsibility to put my business first. I think Simon Sinek has a book called Leaders Eat Last, and I really do like that philosophy. So yeah, that's my personal philosophy on that.
That's really important to know, especially if you're building out a team. Like it's one thing when you're a solopreneur, but once you start building out a team and you need to make sure you have the money on hand to pay your team members, etc. No, that's a really important thing to know. Real quick before we hop off, I wanted to kind of hype up. So you and I are putting together, I don't know, what do you call it, a course, I guess,
Yeah,
for
I
your
would say a course,
students,
which I'm
to
super,
kind of
super
help
excited
them.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, me
So
too. Like I'm excited to get it out there.
yeah, we could talk about it. So essentially, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Working with a lot of my coaches who are making money in the over the 10K per month mark. Now it's like, okay, they've learned how to make money, but it's just sitting in an account. So okay, let's actually start to put this towards a retirement. Let's make sure that we get you set up financially, so that way you could be a leader in your own life with your own family, etc. And I've always had a passion for teaching this stuff, but I'd never had the qualifications or the you know confident answers to recommend that, hey, this is what you should do, X, Y, and Z. And so you and I are working together to put that into the PTBI program, so that way all of our coaches have expert knowledge on personal finance, business finance, which I don't think any other program is doing in the industry. A lot of programs are teaching how to create content and sign clients, but
I haven't even I haven't even seen really any other program or business coach talking about personal finances. That's what's always attracted me back to your content is like, even if you say something I don't necessarily agree with, like, I know you're really into Bitcoin, which I'm not anti Bitcoin, but, I like jokingly commented on that and I was like, I might not recommend that, but like, I just love that you always talk about the impact on your personal finances. I just don't think it gets brought up by any other business coaches.
yeah, no, I agree. And I don't think it's on anyone's radar too. I think people are in so much pain that they need to make money today, that they're attracted to the very flashy, make a lot of money, make 10 grand a month, that they're not even thinking about, okay, how do I actually take this $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 in profit and put it somewhere that's going to grow, for my future? Because I'll be honest, dude, you're not going to be an online coach at 65, right? And so you do need to have, you do need to
I'm not
have,
sure they've thought about that, to be honest with you. Like
you know what? I
that's
actually
something
think,
I think about because I do think like not just out of like you could be a coach at
yeah,
like
you could
65. You
absolutely do it.
could, but like I think they're just so young and they don't have life experience yet that they don't realize they may want to do something different at some point in their life.
Yeah, 100%. And I think about that too. As I'm on team, PTBI, we're going to be running PTBI for as long as I'm having fun. And if I'm still having fun at 65, then PTBI will still be around. But at a certain point, I mean, I'm not going to be 70 years old, teaching 20-year-olds how to start an online coaching business. And so I need to make sure that I'm set up, in the future as well. So yeah, it's something that I'm super passionate about. Regarding the Bitcoin thing, I don't want people to take that out of context. I only put money into Bitcoin after everything else is full. So cash savings is full, retirement's full, debts are paid off. That is extra money that I'm putting into Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, Zach's built a good foundation, and he's afforded himself the freedom to take extra risk in other alternatives, Bitcoin being one of them, which, right now people who are anti-Bitcoin look pretty dumb. So, we'll
Yeah.
see we'll see where it plays out. I just had an interview before you, and the guy was telling me he bought like 6 Bitcoins back when they were like, I don't remember what he said for a price, but like terribly cheap. Like I was talking like spent like 2,000 for all 6 of them and still
Wow.
has them. And I was like, damn,
Yes.
that's
That's pretty
impressive.
nice.
Like that's worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
worked out pretty well. I don't know what the price of it is right now, but I know that's worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah. But I know with what we're going to teach in the course, anyone who's listening to this, what you can expect. We're not going to be talking so much about like crypto or Bitcoin or anything like that. We're going to talk about the foundations, and then we might mention a couple things on like what you could do with the excess cash to get higher returns.
Yeah, we're gonna talk foundations. We're gonna talk about the system that you can really put into place, right? And that's kind of the format we took with this episode. Is I wanted to hear more about your system because everyone's going to have their own system. There's going to be quirks, but a framework, a system that you could implement in your life, going all the way from like, okay, revenue hits the business, and then like, okay, I almost look at it as like a funnel, not in like the terms of like a sales and marketing funnel, but like revenue comes in and then it's gonna go elsewhere until it kind of gets all the way to the bottom, which is like your personal pay. And
Yes.
like, what do you do along the lines to make sure, one, you don't have holes in the bucket, like it's not leaking, but then two, like once it gets down to you personally, that's kind of where we then have that module for like, okay, you've made money, you're profitable, now what do you do with this money? And that's kind of where we'll hit with that last module of like, here's how to invest your money. So it's really about a system and a framework that won't apply 100% to everyone, but it'll give them, I think, a good structure on how their money should flow from the top all the way to the bottom.
Yep. And that's the same thing I do every single month. Money comes in, this gets paid off, this gets paid off, this gets paid off, this gets paid off. Cool. This is where we put the profit.
I also think it's really good visually to see that because I think a lot of people just don't know where their money's going. And so when you lay it out visually of like, it starts here, these are the things where it kind of leaves the bucket and then kind of all the way to the bottom. It's like, oh, and then you can pinpoint, like in a sales and marketing funnel, you would pinpoint like what's your conversion percentage, et cetera, and find like where you're fixing. It's the same thing with cash flow. You can find like, oh, okay, I'm leaking in the business. I got to figure that out and fix that. Or like, oh, actually, like I'm paying myself really good money, but then I'm just spending it all at restaurants or whatever, right? Like you get to fix those little data points. So yeah, I'm excited to put it together for you. We should have that. Well, I should say because it's on me right now to get it completed for you. But I should have that up and ready for you in PTBI by the end of the month. And I think your takeover students are gonna have access to that.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I appreciate you a ton, man. And I love these conversations. I love them.
Oh, so fun.
I don't think people can get enough of them. There's not enough of these
Well, because
conversations.
I like to take theory, right? Because I can hit you with all of my certified financial planner knowledge, all of my education, my trainings from the books, but like that's like someone with like just reading, strength and training books. It's like, no, let's get someone on here and talk about like real life, how they're managing theirs. And so I actually want to have more of these conversations, but just finding the people who are open enough to kind of come on and share that side. And it might be expanding outside of the fitness, genre a little bit, and just talking to online business owners as a whole might be kind of the route to get that. But I would love to have more of these conversations on how people are actually managing their finances.
Yeah, I think it's actually funny coincidence. I had a conversation yesterday. So we have a PTBI student who's doing really, really well. And he recently just hired another PTBI student to be on their team as well. And the student that was hired, so the employee, was asking me, kind of questions about, how much, he kind of wanted to just know what his opportunity was. So he was asking about the coaches that hired him, like numbers. I'm like, why don't you just ask him? And he's like, oh, I don't want to be a pocket watcher. And I'm like, what's a pocket watcher? And he's like, oh, pocket watchers when, yeah, he's like, when someone kind of asks you, intimate questions about your finances, it kind of size you up. And I'm like, dude, I don't think successful people have that insecurity to where I'm like, the most successful people I know are very, very open and transparent about their numbers, about their finances, about what they have going on behind the scenes because there's nothing to be insecure about. And so
Right.
I think that people need to get comfortable talking about their numbers, asking and having conversations about numbers, because that's how people learn, is having conversations and spreading this knowledge and information to one another.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. We live in a society where like people would probably rather talk about their sex life than money sometimes.
Yeah,
Like
no,
most
for real.
people, and you're in an industry where like most people will show up online half naked and are scared to talk about money. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's like it's a real like thing. There's a lot of societal pressures and like guilt, shame, embarrassment around finances, and I'm 100% with you. Like most successful people are an open book. Yeah, they might not, they're not going to give you exactly where their accounts are and their numbers, but like at a high level, like they're an open book. They're not hiding anything. And to your point, the ones who are insecure about it and won't talk about it, it's like, there's probably some red flags there anyways.
yeah, 100%.
So cool, man. Thanks for coming on, Zach. Appreciate it.
Cool, man. Yeah, invite me on anytime, man. I'm happy to do it.
All right, see you.
All right, peace.
Justin Green is the founder of Assist FP, a financial planning firm, and Be a Wealthy Coach LLC, an outsourced CFO service. All opinions expressed in this episode are mine solely and not reflective of Assist FP or Be a Wealthy Coach. As always, this podcast is not advice and it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your own financial, tax, and/or legal advisor before making any decisions.